Alright, today I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup in here with the wiring and the switches and stuff. If you follow my Instagram, you saw a couple weeks ago I was having trouble with the cooling circuit for the cooling fans, and I replaced that switch with one of those styles. What's nice is these blocks all fit one of those really nicely. I guess a truck with more stuff on it would have had uses for that from the factory. For mine, they fit these switches pretty nicely. So, in here, I know what they all are. I replaced a big red switch with that kind that says it's cooling fans. One of these is fogs, one of them is light bar. I'm going to change those to these. So if you've never torn apart one of these dashes, I don't know how long it's been since I showed that on video, but not like an OBS Chevy, the full-size trucks, this one does have a lot of 7mm bolts all over the place that got to be pulled off. Take them down, then you can remove all of this. I don't know how well I can show that. Let's see. One of these days I gotta tear all this apart and do the stereo. That's a long deal. Now I was looking and making sure, but I think at this point all I have to do, is just pull this apart. Pretty sure that's all that's coming apart. That's interesting. Pretty sure, without breaking this 30-year-old plastic. But all you got to do is just pull this out, and then I'll have access to everything that's on the back side of this, because I'm pretty sure this is all snapped in somehow, so I can get to this panel and work with it. Because these have a drilled out hole, which is simple enough, and then there's a wire nut type thing on the back that holds the switches to this dash, but I just need to slice those out to a square so I can fit these kinds of switches in. But yeah, you just end up... Oh, that would be why. Okay, I do have to pull those out. There's screws here and here, that's why. So it is pieced in with that. Okay. It's been a while. I'm forgetting, but now I'm remembering. So you see you've got the two screws, one there and one there. There and there. So I got to get to those. That's why she's not coming out. And I knew there was something else. So these ones are actually Phillips. Okay, so those top ones are Phillips, the rest are all 7mm. Leave them all down here, so I know where they're at. Now we should be able to pull it out. Yep, now it just comes right out. The only thing attaching is all the wiring back here. A lot of it's my mess. A lot of the stuff I've done over the years, the different colored codes I was using, which has caused me problems. You see the one I already did, I'm putting the flags and the labels on them now, so I don't, 10 years down the road, don't forget what I did here. Label it, make it easier for myself. Alright, got all that disconnected. I'm going to clean all that up. Sins of my past. But with all this disconnected, I can disconnect this entire switch panel from the backside. 4 screws, tiny ones, what are they, 5mm? Disconnect those, get this out so I can work on it without busting the rest of the dash. So that's what I'm going to do. Like I said, these nondescripts, they have these little nuts that thread over the posts, and they pop right out, which is the nice thing about them. They're real simple to install that way, as long as you got access to both sides of them. Boom, they're out. Now last time I tore this all apart, I even prepped the bulb, blacking it out with a Sharpie a little bit, but I forgot to put it back in there, and that's the hole it goes in. The problem is this circuit works such that if this bulb is out, which is the ABS bulb, it will trigger the brake bulb down here. So on a standard transmission like this, it's kind of a pain in the butt to have the brake light on all the time because you forget you have your parking brake engaged. Or at least I do, and so does my wife. So by fixing this, putting that bulb back in there, hopefully it'll light that up again. I just want to get rid of the annoying ABS light, but I don't want to do it at the cost of this one being on. I want this to be on if I have the parking brake on, so that I know to change that. So that's one of the reasons for getting into here today. Alright, I can't do that with one hand, so I'll be back in a sec. The other thing I'm going to do is pull this back out. You can see I did Sharpie on that, but I'm going to put paint on that. And these little deals here are a star drive of... Can you see that? I don't know. T10. So T10s are what those are. And they're pretty coarse thread. I'd rather do it with hand. Because machines will probably screw up this plastic, so just pull those out and I'll have the plastic cover off. This, by the way, is the same thing you would need to do if you wanted to put one of those white back facings on here. It has occurred to me in the Suburban I did switch out the blue bulbs, and I've thought about doing it with this because I do have the bulbs. I'm on the fence. These ones don't flicker. I've never had these ones flicker, in fact. So I might just leave them blue. So, which the sad thing is, it means I may tear this part again in a little while if they actually do start flickering. That comes off. Don't screw with much of that. I'm going to get some black paint for that, because all this stuff is kind of back etched for when the bulbs come on. You can overheating, check engine light, all that junk that's in there. The brake, that's the upshift one. I hate that light, so I painted that one too. I don't need some freaking nanny bot telling me how to shift my truck. I know when to shift it. I know what RPMs I want to be at, but I think I'll put paint on both of those so I don't have to see them. There we go. Just some of this touch-up paint. That should be nice and dark so I don't get the annoying lights bugging me when I'm driving. And the paint should soak in. This is paper, basically. It should soak into it nice and neat and keep it darkened out. I hope that bulb does its job. I will check in a second here before I button all this back up and see if the truck does what I want it to do. Well, yeah, I've got all that cut out, ready to go. A lot of wiring to do to make that work. But this was a kind of a side quest on this one. We'll get this put back in there. I'll get the wiring done, and then I'll see you guys in a minute. First things first, I got some coloring stuff that I don't like in here. Whereas I had this one, I marked it with black tape, but it goes down there with blue. I am going to replace that leg with brown. Because on these other two switches I used brown for the ground, which, you know, makes sense. I was using green for the switch leg on these things. I'm going to leave that as is. And I was using white for power coming in and out. So yeah, that's the ignition hot power that comes to the switch. This is one of those things. I've had this truck for 20 years and I got to remember what all I did to it. But I did a body ground right here with a self-tapper to ground all those switches, because here's the two light brown wires and here's that blue wire I used for ground, which is not normally my convention. I don't know what kind of bad day I was having that day. But I'm about to fix all this. I'll pull all those apart and make sure the grounds for the switches all go to something good and decent. And probably just daisy chain it into one since they're all right there. One ground leg should be fine for these switches. They all throw relays anyway, so they don't handle a whole lot of power. And that's how I'm going to do it. Let's fix this. Sins of my youth. Who knows, somewhere in the last 20 years. Okay, so it's all coming back to me. I know why I've got all these big bundles of wires and everything, and why I didn't want to cut stuff. These are factory terminated ends from different KC highlighter kits. You know, KC fog lights, halogen stuff, all that junk that I've had over the years. And so that's why I didn't cut stuff. Nowadays I don't do that. I don't use pre-terminated kits. Like this one has a fuse in it. Nowadays I do my own wiring, make it exactly to length. I don't have all this junk hanging out under here. It's less of a mess. It's more easy to trace and figure out. In here in the fuse box I got taps on a couple of leads. One's ignition hot, one's all the time hot. And I think the all the time hot one is the one I've got the fuse on. It's a little 3 amp fuse, never been triggered. I may leave it there, because basically whatever fog light kit I used had that, and it's like one of the cheapest fuse holders you can get, this type. But it had this on there to control your light switch or whatever. I mean, my lights, I always run them through relays anyway, I always have for decades now. But the switches can go on small stuff like that without much of a problem. Especially when it's interior to the truck and up under the dash. Not going to see much abuse under there. Not much in the way of moisture either. Alright, as you look at the switch and what comes in and out of it, there's another leg that could be there and there. So not all the pins on this thing are used. I think some of them have to do with if you have a fog light circuit, there'd be more pins used. For what I have, big fat red one's the main power supply. It's hot all the time. As is the orange one, it's hot all the time. That goes to accessories that are all inside the interior. The yellow one goes to the headlights. The brown one goes to the marker lights. So to do what I'm about to do, I'm going to tap into the brown one and tag it into my fog light for power supply to my fog lights. I did have it going here, so my fog lights were pretty much hot all the time. This means my fog lights will only come on with my marker lights, which is kind of how I like to do the operation of these anyway. So I can have the headlights off but have the fog lights on. It's sometimes when fog gets thick, that's a good thing to do. Yeah, so that's the other thing I could tie into this as well if I wanted to right here. I got the ignition hot for my fan, but I could do this leg right here. Could do the fog lights and all the way across to the marker lights that are on here, the bottom marker lights. I'm tempted to do that, to run that leg from here all the way into there. This would end up having a fused block in here or out there, I forget where, but one of these is the fuse for this. So I'm not worried about loading up that circuit. It's meant to have a lot of lights. All of these lights are LED. It was designed for incandescent, so it should be a way lesser draw. Should be fine to do that. Tiny wire, and I'm using thicker wires for a lot of my runs. The grounds are definitely 14 gauge versus the 16 gauge stuff that's going on everywhere else, so should be fine that way. The only one that really matters is this ignition hot so that the fans turn off with the ignition. Everything else will be operated based on what the light switch is doing, and that's more what I want. So I do need to tap into this brown wire. Long explanation, hope you caught on to it. I've been working at this for a while now, cleaning up the sins of my past, tracing down things, making sure I'm getting the right things. I am obviously marking them all with flags, so in the future I'll be able to figure it all out, not too hard at all. Had a rub through on the wire there, so I corrected that with some heat shrink. Everything else looks good. Put new rubber grommets down there. Can we get to where you can see them? Oh, you won't be able to see them. But new rubber grommets down there for where it penetrates the firewall. So everything's progressing. Alright, here it is. All back in. I haven't done the rock light switch. I'm going to wait till later. Pain in the butt. I wish they'd have made it so you can pull this whole panel out without having to disassemble the entire truck. Well, the entire dash anyway. But it all works the way I want to. So all those come on with the marking lights. Those would come on with the ignition. Those, I can run those even without. Don't know if I wanted to do them that way, did I? Yeah, because they only come on with the marker lights. If the marker lights are on, those are on. If I turn those off, boom, they're off. So fog lights are off, fog lights are on. So that's not bad. If I realize I've left those lights on, I can turn them off. But the cooling fans are still ignition hot. So that works the way I want it to. Alright, if you come this far, appreciate you watching. Another adventure with the S10. Got some punk on the last video, actually not even the last video, it was videos ago, saying something about what a piece of junk, why spend the time wasting time with an S10. You know, if you got comments like that, you really ought to take some time to wash the Cheeto dust off your hands and go and see if mommy's made your milk and cookies yet. People and their keyboard freaking antics, I don't know. For me, this truck, I've had it 20 years, and so a lot of the time I took today was basically cleaning up wiring that I'd done in the past, bringing it up to the standards I use today. what I did worked, never burnt the truck down, things are fused, fusible links, so on and so forth. But this is cleaner, this is better. Now if you're in here, you know what the switches are. It's kind of nice. And then if you're really following along with me, you know the video this week should have been an overview of something major on the Suburban. Yeah, well, Suburban's in the shop. I'm having someone else work on that, getting the exhaust manifolds maybe replaced if they're cracked or bent, but definitely the gaskets on them redone. So keep watching. Sometime next week when I've got that truck back, we'll take a look on the big major upgrade it got. But otherwise, this is just my day off, playing around with something that's been bothering me for a while, getting these done. Someday I'll get that done. Take care of the stereo problems. But otherwise, appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.